Welcome back to another edition of Smart Driving Cars. We're glad you're here. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alan Kornhauser. Hi, Alan.
Hey, good afternoon, Fred.
You're into year 54, did you say the other 54 there?
54 at Princeton. This is actually 56. Oh,
Oh.
whatever, never mind. Oh,
And with us once again from
Jesus.
Sweden is consultant and co-author of The Real Case for Driverless Mobility, Michael Senna. Hi, Michael.
Great to be with you. Good evening. Good evening from Stockholm.
Ooh,
And Michael, your latest musings on mobility is out with the headline: Elon Musk changes Tesla's narrative. Jacques Nasser of Ford tried this 25 years ago, something along those lines. Give us the
Yeah.
overview here.
Well, we know Jacques Nasser was the CEO of Ford Motor Company for just a little over 2 years. He started his career with Ford in Australia. He had moved there with his family from Lebanon when he was a little kid and grew up in Australia, went to a technical college and had a stint with Ford before he came out. Ford at one point had a pretty major operation in Australia. He started his career with them when he was 21 years old, and by the time he was in his early 50s, he was CEO. He wasn't chairman of the board and CEO. That the chairman of the board continued to be with William Clay Ford Jr. He decided that Ford was going to change its direction, that it was no longer going to make cars, it was going to make computers on wheels. And this became a signature event in the history of Ford, and it became his contribution to the world of automobiles. It's at the turn of the millennium, came in 1999. At that point in time, the mobile network operators were kings of the road. I mean, they showed up at all of the automotive events and essentially walked around saying, well, eventually, we're going to own these cars, we're going to own these companies because we're making so much money, we're so big, and really the people are only going to be driving the cars in order to be able to use their mobile phones while they're in the car. So we're gonna take over the automotive world. I was there. I'm not making this up. This is real. And the most of the automotive companies said, well, that's it's interesting that you're saying that, but we think people actually drive cars because they like cars, not because they want to be on the telephone while they're in there. Jacques Nasser took this more seriously. He was an automotive guy. He got to where he was because he was very much of an automotive person. And when he became the CEO, he changed his tune. He said, look, we've made automobiles, but the world is changing and we have to change with it. And our cars in the future are going to be mobile phones on wheels. And he walked the talk. He made major investments in telematics. He developed groups primarily in Great Britain. John Archer. There are a number of people working with the communications, mobile communications in cars, and he also developed a joint venture with Qualcomm, which is based in California and San Diego. And he was following through with this. And I was working very closely with Volvo at the time. We had started something called Wireless Car, which began with the people that I was working with in the department that I worked with. That was the interface between the mobile networks and the vehicles. And this was incorporated into the work that Ford was doing. They set up the Premier Automotive Group, and all of this communications was kind of funneled into that group. But Ford had a problem, and the problem was that their Explorer, the Ford Explorer, was having difficulty staying on the road. And Ford, particularly Jack Nasser, decided that the problem was the tires, and the tires were delivered by their longtime supplier, Firestone. And he essentially threw Firestone under the bus. Unfortunately for him, he's somebody must have told him, but maybe he just wasn't listening. That um, Bill Ford's mother was a Firestone, and the Firestone family was very much a part of Ford. And this didn't really sit very well. So when criticism turned into real problems financially, Jack Nasser just got thrown out, essentially thrown out, and that was the end of the story. That Ford was now going to change its essence from being an automotive company to being a mobile phone on wheels company. And I made this comparison for the specific reason. 25 years later, Elon Musk, in a talk with investors, principally investors, says, we're not in the car business anymore, or car business is really secondary. We're in the AI and robotics business. So that's where we're going to be, and that's what we're going to do, and all of our focus is going to be on this area. And essentially, what I'm saying here in the musings is that sounds good. I mean, it's a nice story if you want your people to believe that you're going to move from 1 trillion, and now in order for him to get his salary that he's been promised, to an $8 trillion company by 2030. You need to have a story that's a little bit better than what Ford has. It's a $40 billion company that sells 3 times as many cars or 4 times as many cars as Tesla. So it sounds like a good story, but someone's going to have to make the cars. And I believe that Tesla will continue making cars, whether Elon can hold his attention. And this article, by the way, came before the $1 trillion story, where he's going to make $1 trillion in salaries salary if he meets certain goals. And one of those goals is that it becomes an $8 trillion company from being a $2 trillion company today. The musings, the previous musings was Elon Musk compared to Ford, the man, Henry Ford, not Ford the company. And this one took another little detour into the world of automotive, not really comparing Jack Nasser to Elon Musk, because I don't think that's a fair comparison. They're 2 very different people. But the idea of changing a direction of a company from what made it what it is to having another story and hoping that that story turns into what the person who's giving that story or relating that story thinks it will be. I don't think that's going to happen. Tesla's in the business of making cars. It's not in the business of making robots that dance like Elon Musk dances. If you've ever seen one of those robots dancing, you know what I'm talking about. Or if you've ever seen Elon Musk dancing whenever he's doing one of his routines, you know what I'm talking about. So that's what Musings is about this time around.
It's a great read. We encourage people to take a look at michaellsenna.com. And along these lines, I suppose to some extent, Tesla is out with its updated master plan. And some key phrases were highlighted, Alan, in a note that you had sent along. Autonomy must benefit all of humanity, and everyone deserves access to these opportunities and technological growth. And
the key phrase for me that's in there is the affordability phrase, because I guess that's sort of that for some reason, if I look at what the opportunity really is of automation, or even the whole industrial revolution. It's been to do things that were unaffordable and turn them into affordable things. And the transformation from unaffordable to affordable is one that at least in some instances, if not in many instances, leads to enormous increase in scale. And with the increase in scale, then tends to imply that more people are benefiting, more entities are benefiting. And I think, to me, one of the real fundamental struggles of mobility is to try to make it a level playing field. And what's happened over the past 100 or so years, and possibly even before that, in previous 200 years or 500 years or thousands of years. I mean, you didn't have much mobility if you didn't have a horse. And, maybe a horse isn't all that, I don't know, I haven't really looked at it, but it must have been a burden on some family incomes in the 1700s, 1500s. And unless you had that, you were walking. And then, some folks put some things together in cities to allow some things to happen, but, large portion of that was to make it affordable. Trolley rides were a nickel, then a dime. And in fact, sort of some of the interesting things when one looks at the evolution of electric traction trolleys is in fact, at the times, those that were doing the investment, the deployments, were looking to create legislation to ensure that the fares remained a nickel or a dime and weren't reduced by society for that. Simply because if you look at the economics of the darn things, the opportunities of affordability was that the demand was essentially infinite or really big at the low price. And because the implied operation was that you would have shared vehicles, that in fact the productivity of those vehicles in terms of carrying more and more people was a real opportunity. So that in fact, your revenue goes up at the fixed rate as a function of number of customers you have. But because you pack the people into the same number of vehicles operating, the operating costs were really pretty flat. There was a fixed one, but then it remained flat. So, I mean, you really like that because when those two suckers cross, the money flows. And as you get further and further down there, boom, boom. Okay. Now, the unfortunate part that happened to the electric traction folks or the subway folks or all the people that built all the subways in New York City, they were competing companies, out to, I mean, well, the way they increased the volume was they sold land along the way. It was actually a land deal. And they generated the demand out of that, and that if the demand continues up, and your costs are flat, but your revenue is fixed per unit. Ooh, I mean that's like the best business plan you could ever think of. But unfortunately, after World War I, there was inflation. Yipes. In dollar terms, not corrected for inflation, because if you now have a constant fare because you've been beating on your representatives that put laws in there, don't raise the fare, don't raise the, don't lower the fare, keep the fare the same, don't lower the fare, because okay, if we have greater productivity, the fare should go lower, don't keep it there so we can move. Now inflation hits, whew, yipes, I need some help. The bucks that I'm getting don't go far enough because now my costs in those dollar terms are going up because of inflation. Once that curve goes up faster than what the productivity curve comes in there in terms of revenue, then now you're losing money again. And then you have to have the public jump in there and say, well, okay, I'll take this bankrupt one, that bankrupt one, put it together, and da. This is what we went through, for the freight railroad industries 50 years ago, more than 50, 1975 when I got into it. That's the creation of Conrail, April 1st, I guess 1976, when it finally got done. That's taken 7 bankrupt railroads, putting them into one, infusing it with government money, and then hoping for the best. I testified it did have more upside potential than downside risk. I was optimistic at the time. And in fact, we pegged it in the summer of 1975 as required. And I think it was 6 billion instead of the 1 billion that the US put in. I think when everybody did the adding up of what it finally took to make Conrail profitable was 6 billion. So count one for me. But that's when we had a lot of fun with that one. And we thought it was going to, as we talked about, I think in another one of these things, we thought it was going to become the first transcontinental railroad. We came within 2 weeks of that thing making it into a NAFTA road. Not only transcontinental, but north-south, boom, it was going to be great. We argued it was going to be great for shippers in the Northeast. Now you have a real partner to be able to do your logistics, as opposed to having one fight against the other to nickel and dime them into the lowest price. I mean, it just depends how you want to run your businesses. But I guess we're not going to have that with the Union Pacific and the Norfolk Southern and probably CSX and I don't know, Burlington Northern, or who knows, whatever. We'll watch it evolve.
How did we get there?
Huh?
How did we get there?
How do we get there?
No, how did we get to CXS from where we were?
Discussing because it all has to do with the evolution of transportation companies as to whether or not what they're doing, and I guess part of the affordability of the transportation companies. I mean, what made electric traction was the affordability. What allowed that? What allowed the dispersion was the affordability of mobility. It wouldn't have happened. You would have stayed concentrated. You wouldn't have built the amusement parks at the end of the lines so that you can get the people traveling out there during on Sundays while people were hawking land along the way. And I don't know, at least some people have suggested that caused the suburbs of dispersion. And then of course the automobile comes in and really allows that for the Levittowns of this world. And the Levittowns get replicated here, and here, and we're still replicating Levittowns, I guess, or the equivalent thereof.
Yeah,
Sort of.
But it's the important thing to counter this continuous argument that says that cars have caused sprawl is cars did not cause sprawl.
It enabled sprawl.
It didn't even enable sprawl. Sprawl was enabled by, as you said, sprawl initially was enabled by trains.
Yeah.
Creating suburbs. The suburbs didn't just happen because people wanted to enjoy the greenery. They happened because the cities were such crap living in the cities where the streets were filled with urine and the
Fecal matter that
fecal
they
matter
sold to
and
New
dead,
Jersey that we then
dead
grew great
horses,
tomatoes and corn from. I mean, yay,
yeah.
yay,
So
yay. I
people,
mean, you know,
the first suburb was Brooklyn.
yeah,
And that was before the bridge was built. Then
yeah.
they left New York because New York was such a shithole, and
Poop, poop hole. We have to
it
say
was
poop hole.
full. Yeah, okay.
Say that's a four-letter word too, you know. So
You can blip that out, but it
no,
was. I mean,
no, yeah,
apparently there are things that are happening in today's politics that are making our cities poop holes again, but that's another story. So, I mean,
yeah,
people left the rich left because it stunk in Chicago. The middle class left because it was yellow fever in downtown New York, where Manhattan, where people were living, and they moved out to places where they could live and breathe. And then it gradually happened that the enable ferries first, trains second. Nobody drove cars over well, maybe they did initially over to Brooklyn and back into Manhattan, but there were enough trains and other things to allow that. So, this idea that cars enabled movement, people didn't need to go anywhere until the Industrial Revolution. They worked on a farm, they worked where they were, and they didn't have to go anyplace.
yeah.
So
Yeah, the Industrial Revolution really required, I mean, it did a lot of automation, but it required the bringing together of people to collaborate in the production of large volumes of goods.
yeah,
Okay, I mean that's really, I mean that's to me what that did, and to have to bring them together, then you either create the company coal towns of Pennsylvania, Revlock Revlock and Lock Lev Revlock Culver. One is an antonym of is whatever the other one. There are two little towns in Pennsylvania that are both anthracite coal towns, like the anthracite coal town you
yeah,
grew up in. I
like
mean, it was
Scranton.
I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
like
from Scranton down to
from
Montford.
Scranton.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and
Vanderbilt, Hazleton, yeah, the whole works. But the other thing is that there's another little piece in there as well. The Industrial Revolution began with factories that were driven by natural natural power,
yeah,
primarily water power.
water. You sure?
The change from water power to electricity was major. And many from water power to steam to then electricity was a major change,
Yeah, because
which had enormous impact on the way that where factories could be. They didn't have to be next to water anymore. They didn't have to be close.
falling water. You needed falling water, not just,
Yeah.
you
Well,
need
falling
the
water,
higher the
yeah,
better,
yeah, created by dams.
with
So
some of them, yeah.
yeah. Well, here in Sweden, most of our power until the 50s and 60s was principally hydroelectric power.
Yeah.
And then Sweden became a major nuclear power. So by the time the 80s came along, we had 50-50, 50 to hydroelectric, 50% nuclear power, and no coal,
Yeah.
absolutely no coal whatsoever. Until the environmental parties decided that nuclear power was bad and we have to close the nuclear plants, and like Germany, for example, ended up buying most of its power from in the form of gas from Russia, and now we're living with the impact of that.
Yes. So if we look at the Lawrence Livermore energy charts, which I love greatly, and maybe Fred will put one up to show people, and we'll show people what it looks like for Sweden or the United States. I mean, or you look at those energy flow which is from what the source of the energy is on one side and the flow to the consumption of the energy on the other side. I just think they're probably some of the best graphics made, simply because you can just look at that and really see what it is, the balance, imbalance from various sources to do the various things that one has to do in society: move people, produce stuff for people, keep their homes air conditioned and heated, and either, I don't know what the other one is, but there's sort of another one. To me, when one looks at that, maybe we should have one to show. And the really, to me, interesting thing about that is how much of the energy we consume goes into doing the things that we want to do, which is, make aluminum cans, move from A to B in an airplane to D, and all the heat our homes, and what is lost in inefficiency. I mean, it shows that in gray. And the gray stuff, some of the gray.
We have a chapter in our book on that.
Yeah, we have a chapter in our book on that, because we really want people who sort of have who want to look at electricity as a way to propel vehicles. You're converting the energy, first of all, into electricity, so you have more than 50% losses of the energy right there. Then you take the electricity and you put it in the vehicle, which of course isn't anywhere near perfectly efficient, and you have enormous losses there. So you have losses in the generation of the electricity, losses in and you say to yourself, is electricity really a good idea here? And we just throw that out so people can put it in their own brains and think about this problem. It is not as clear cut as some would have suggested it is. That's all that's all we were saying in book one, right? I think. I mean, if I recall.
One of the things that Musk included in his latest master plan was the energy business at Tesla, along with the robotaxis and things.
He's working on it, and it's good that people work on that thing, because of course, if we can get to a point at which one has free energy, I mean, I guess caveman must have been out there saying, man, I want free energy. We're still wanting free energy. I mean, it's sort of a constant of life. The cheaper you can make that thing, the better off you're going to be. And I guess this is how we got into this thing. To me, what the vision for it, what sort of Tesla's been, but sort of certainly our point is that the affordability of this thing is the thing we're trying to look at and take advantage of. And of course, I think as they spell out in their fourth generation view is how affordability can improve the quality of life of many people. And if we look at some of the people on this planet, in this country, in this community, they could use some improvement in their quality of life, and the way to do that is at least we think, is through affordability and affordability of mobility, because mobility does provide opportunity. We only go to places, we only go to places where we think we're going to improve our location, time, utilities. That's benefit to us. That's why we go, is to get the benefit out of going to be there. You went to the opera today, Michael, because you thought, I hope you thought you'd be a happier camper. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I might say opera, man, that's boring. Holy hell, I'm never going to show up there. I mean, I wouldn't be. We're different. I mean, it's great. I do like opera, sort of a little bit, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, most
you
people
know,
don't like it because they've
But
never
he
experienced
likes
it.
the Stillers more. So
I like the Stillers. I'm going to go to the Stiller home opener tomorrow. I'm going to get on the road at 5:30 and hopefully show up there at about 11 o'clock and walk across the bridge and go to the Stiller home opener and get a suntan. It is going to be like, wow, instead of minus 900 degrees,
Yeah.
it's the only
For your
time to go.
listeners who didn't grow up in Pittsburgh, the Stillers is the Steelers. In
But we
Scranton,
call them Stillers.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The Stillers are a family of comedians on television, but the Steelers play football.
Yeah. Oh, they
very,
try
very,
to.
very
Ooh,
good, Michael.
boy, do we love Aaron Rodgers. Mwah.
So
Right.
Uh,
We'll see how
back
that
to
goes.
some of the headlines here.
yeah, back to
Tesla first.
reality here. Okay.
Tesla has received approval to begin robotaxi service testing in Nevada on public streets. And while that's happening, Amazon Zoox is now offering robotaxi rides to the public in Las Vegas, not charging for them yet in their vehicle. It's this toaster shaped thing that with no pedals or steering wheel. So they're
Yeah, great. I'm glad that Nevada says it's okay. I don't know. Who knows what NHTSA is going to say? I mean, how many of them? As long as they don't make, I don't know, 2,500 of them, they're good. If you limit your forever production to 2,500, I guess you might as well make it a luxury good because not too many people are going to be able to take advantage of it. So you might as well go after the luxury market, going after hey, let's.
This has been a bit of a problem. What you just said. I listened to something the other day by someone who should be actually I was listening in on Friday in a standards group, and someone talked about this that NHTSA has finally allowed the American companies to do what foreign companies have been doing for so many years, and this is a major breakthrough. And I explained this in one of the issues of the Dispatcher before the Dispatcher became two newsletters. This is not actually the case. There has never been a prohibition on the part of NHTSA for companies to do what foreign companies were doing. What the exception, so-called exception, was cars that are manufactured in Europe are not compliant with the federal motor vehicle safety standards in the United States, just like our cars here are not compliant with the regulations that are set up for type approval in Europe. So what NHTSA has allowed is companies taking their cars as they are into the United States to test certain parts of those vehicles before those cars have gone through the process of being adapted to be compliant with the federal motor vehicle standards. It's like Europe saying you can take your Chevy into Germany and you can test that car without being type approved in order for you to understand what you need to do to have that car working in Germany so that you can then make the modifications of being type approved. This has also been used by companies like small. We have a small company called Koenigsegg here in Sweden, and it makes a very small number of cars. Those cars can be driven, taken into the United States, and under the what you're referring to as the luxury, the possibility of taking a car in with a low number of vehicles without meeting all of the motor vehicles, the federal motor vehicle safety standards. Now, if it sounds like, we're finally opening up the United States market for United States cars because we prevented them from doing what we allowed the European companies to do. That's not the case. The American cars are made from the beginning to be compliant with federal motor vehicle safety standards. Now you take Zoox. Zoox is not complying with any standards. It's not going to meet any of the requirements for type approval in Europe, and it certainly doesn't meet the federal motor vehicle safety standards in the United States because it doesn't have a steering wheel. Very simple, right? So you can't put a vehicle on the road in the United States to be operational unless it meets the federal motor vehicle safety standards, unless, and this is where you come in, this is where California has come in, and this is where Las Vegas has come in, unless the motor vehicle operation, the state says, we are going to allow this to be done in a test mode, but you have to fulfill the requirements in that test mode that we have established. So California said, you can test Waymo, you can, any company, you can test your vehicles here, but you've got to comply with our requirement to report every single incident that occurs with that vehicle. And this is where Tesla's had a problem, because Tesla has, they've gotten the approval, but they haven't made any attempt to provide the information that they need. And what Tesla said, and I agree with them, Tesla says, but our cars they're not driverless cars. Our cars aren't driverless. We don't tell people that they can sit in the back seat, and we don't let our cars be driven around in California without people sitting behind the wheel.
Yeah.
So we don't think we need to comply with that requirement, because even though we're selling a full self-driving car, which they're saying they are, essentially our cars must have somebody behind the steering wheel. They have to be paying attention. If they don't pay attention, the car isn't going to let you drive it, even though you're in full self-driving mode. So what's the problem? And that's been the lack of communication on that point. But it doesn't help when people make other kinds of statements that somehow imply that, well, now Zoox, of course, it doesn't have a steering wheel, but that's okay because the car can drive itself and it's safe. And let's see how it works without a driver, without a steering wheel. It would be a lot better if this obfuscation that's occurring, but particularly generated by NHTSA, because it's not doing its job properly. It's not doing what it should be doing. Taking this and saying, now, let's be responsible about this. Let's really try to understand what is the reason why we want driverless cars on the road in the first place. Let's get to the base, the fundamental basis of what it is that we're trying to do with driverless cars. You, Waymo, are telling your people the reason that you're doing this, the reason you're spending billions of dollars on driverless cars, is to make them safer. It doesn't help if there are people out there saying the only reason for having driverless cars is because they're going to be safer, because there's absolutely no proof, none whatsoever, that driverless cars are safer. In fact, I put these numbers out there. If you take all the accidents that Waymo's had and you compare them with all of the mileage that cars have driven, Waymo's actually, their rate of accidents is higher than the standard rate of accidents with all cars on the roads. It just is. That's the numbers are there, but somehow Waymo's got this story out there saying, we're 88% safer than human-driven cars, and because we've had X number of accidents versus these number of accidents, and they're not comparing their vehicles to the total number of miles or kilometers that are being driven by all of the cars on all of the roads. So they've taken a little slice and said, oh, well, we compare ours with just this, and based on that, we're 88% more safer than cars driven by humans. Well, come on, let's forget the whole discussion.
Michael, okay,
Yeah.
I want to argue with you about 18 points that you've just gone through. One, I think, is with respect to the numbers. I think U.S. has some sort of limit, 2,500 or 2,000 or whatever the number of cars you can put out there in the road to do your various testings of the various things that don't meet federal motor vehicles.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of the reason that's one of the things that they're doing. They're using. They can go out there and do that. But of course, to do more vehicles, then you've got to change them. You either have to change your design to conform, or you have to change the federal motor vehicles standards. I mean,
Yeah.
the federal motor vehicle standards need to be looked at, okay? Because those things, I mean, why don't they might as well just say we need to have a horse out there in front of the vehicle,
That's not
and
true.
oh, I know it's
That's
not
not
true.
true.
Okay,
That
oh,
is
so
not
I
true.
was over. I'm sorry, it's not
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I was being mean to FMCSA, but come on. I mean, guys, do we really need a rear view mirror instead of a camera with a screen that shows what the image is? I don't want to go into it, whatever. But somebody should say, hey, we're in 2025. We're about to be 2026. You guys are still in 1950 or 42 or 27, or I don't know, but
I could not disagree more. I could not disagree. The people who are actually doing the work, working on those standards, they know what they're doing. They know how to get to the level of safety that's required. I do not agree that there's a bunch
level of safety that's
old
required.
parts
What is the
sitting
level of
there.
safety that's required? I mean, that now we're going to talk about safety, okay? And to me, the problem about safety is misbehavior by the human in the loop.
Yeah,
Okay,
but then
it is
now we're
misbehavior of the human in the loop, and we have not dealt with that human in the loop at all. And what we should probably do is get that human the heck out of the loop. Okay, I mean the human is very frail, very limited in what that human can do, and of course that human is, oh man, I mean,
I
do not take my freedom away from me. Don't take that steering wheel out of my hand. Don't take that gas pedal off of my foot.
Alan,
Oh,
we've had this discussion,
I know.
I do not agree.
Okay, well, it's
That's
great. I
not
mean,
the
we don't
point.
need to agree on this
Yeah,
one, okay? Yeah.
it's not the reason why I'm working on driverless mobility. The reason I'm working on driverless mobility is not to put a lot of taxi drivers or bus drivers out of work. That's not the point. The point is to be
Did I
able,
say that was my point? I didn't say that was my point either. But
yeah,
to take the driving out of me as owner of my car, the person in command, thou shalt not ever even think that I'm not doing the right thing. I mean, come on, never mind.
Very good. I love
Hasn't Madison Avenue sold that to me? I didn't come out of the womb, just thinking that. Do. I mean, I got to have an E-type. I got to do. I don't know. Yes, we are going into
yeah,
weird
yeah,
places.
yeah, yeah.
one of the
Uh,
headlines you include in the newsletter, Alan, is from Harvard Business School. Why people blame self-driving cars more than human drivers.
yeah, I think that this discussion leads in. I read the paper.
What is
Don't
this?
don't just
I
just
didn't hear
don't
this.
just don't. This is not in. I mean, we didn't give you all the good stuff, Michael. This is a new one. There. Please,
This is one of Alan's last minute.
those of you that look at the e-letter, you can read the cliff notes, okay, of the article, but really take a look at the article. The article is actually to me, a very good look at this really sort of,
Okay, now hang on, hang a second.
yeah.
I canceled my subscription that I had for 25 years, 30 years, actually, 30 years to Harvard Business Review because it just got to be so unbusinesslike, so much, you know, cancel culture, like, what are you talking about? What was in
I found a
Harvard?
good article in
What's the
Harvard Business
article? Yeah, who
Review,
wrote it?
or uh,
Who is it? What is he?
DeFreitas. I think he's an assistant professor there, and I just thought it was a very thought. Am I not allowed? I mean, I understand. I don't like Harvard either. You know,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
at
not that I don't
Princeton.
like
I mean, of
Harvard.
course we
Yeah.
don't like. I have Harvard sucks T-shirts. You know, I mean, you know,
Listen, I lived there for 18 years. I know what it's like to be
whatever.
at Princeton
Is
and
that for
Bryant
hockey or football, Alan?
and
I don't.
Cambridge. But so what was the point of this Harvard professor writing saying that people distrust? Because where does that come from?
You know, it's he's looking at the issue of perception versus liability of an automated vehicle being the cause of a crash.
So it's all
Okay.
hypothetical. It's not based on
It
any
is in
real.
a sense, hypothetical, but looking
Okay.
at other areas in terms of other places where in fact perception is not necessarily reality. And how do you then match up, why? Because the thought is that if there's a crash, then between an autonomous vehicle and a non-autonomous vehicle, the knee-jerk reaction is going to be that it's the autonomous vehicle's fault.
So this is
Okay.
this is his theory is not based on any fact because there is no fact. There's nothing for him
He
to
no
base his opinion on.
he looks at surveys. He looks at that. He tries to provide substance into this
Okay,
question.
so the
Okay.
survey the only surveys that I'm aware of are the surveys that AAA has done saying, how would you feel about driving or riding in a car without a
Those
driver?
kinds of surveys. I'm not
But
sure that exactly,
there's not
but there have
those.
been others. There have been others in
I can't
terms
think
of
of any.
the whole perception with respect to the situation in Florida where Tesla was found by the jury to be to have liability associated with when a guy is, I don't know if he was drunk, but he certainly had his foot on the accelerator all the way up into the crash,
Yeah.
and killed a woman. And now yet the public perception on that is that no, it was the fault of the automated vehicle, that it was Tesla's fault on that.
Yeah, well,
Not that. I mean,
that's a
to
good
me,
example of the media took this, people who are writing about this, people who are putting this in front of other people who are going to read it without having any understanding at all about what the actual situation was. What is it that the person is doing?
choosing to have another fish to fry.
Not
Okay.
choosing to have another fish to fry.
Or a fish to fry, as
Yeah.
opposed to one kind of fish versus another kind of fish.
Well, what advantage does somebody have of getting an article written or published by having a view that says, well, the person is wrong, that the Tesla was
Because their the clientele of the entity, sort of, is that. I mean, it's a continuation of the flow of information in one direction or another, which is either implicit or explicitly biased.
okay. And so the
Okay, a
person,
lot of us
this
blame
Harvard,
that if you're going to watch Fox News, you're going to love Trumpy poo. If you're going to watch MSNBC, you're going to hate Trumpy poo. I don't know.
yeah. And
It's
if you're
that
going to
sort of
read,
thing. And they tried to deal with this perception problem. They're more trying to focus the problem and define the problem than they are to really do a solution. Hey, before you can find a solution to the problem, you have to do a good job. First of all, um, stating what the problem is.
yeah, exactly. That,
Yeah,
and so
yeah. I
the
mean,
point of I didn't read the article.
Yeah, yeah,
I'd like to read the article to get a sense of
yeah.
what this person is
We'll
saying.
have it. You'll
But
have it, and you'll enjoy it.
the
Okay.
problem, I don't know if I will,
I think
actually.
you will because
The problem as I've seen it is not only Elon Musk and Waymo, but everyone who's been involved in the process of developing driverless vehicles has never addressed the main issue. Who wants it and why do they want it? So the answer to the first question, who wants it? Nobody wants it. Nobody is asking for driverless cars. That's a given. No one is asking for
very
driverless
few, if
cars.
any. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Okay. Now, so why is anybody working on driverless cars? What's the reason behind a Waymo spending billions of dollars on developing and buying cars and doing this? What is it? What's behind it? I've
They
tried
claim
to answer that
safety.
question.
They claim
That's,
safety.
they're not in the safety business.
But they
Waymo is
claim
not in the
safety. I mean, I
safety
don't care
business.
whether that you think they're in the safety business or not. I think you read all this stuff. They claim that it's safety.
Yeah, but so far they haven't proven that it is. Not with anything that they've done. They have not proven
Well,
that the
they
cars
may not have
are safer.
proven it to you, but they must have proven it to themselves that think that they're gaining on safety and safety. I don't even know how you prove it.
Yeah, well, you prove it by saying
Because
how
you
you
got to
try.
compare apples and apples.
They can't.
Okay.
Waymo is not
Okay.
driving on the same roads where Tesla can drive all of their cars today. Waymo's
Absolutely.
not
So
on those
therefore,
roads.
you can't even do the comparison.
Exactly.
Alan, also in the newsletter from the city, where are driverless cars going in New York City? I guess you answer the question with another question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says how much, some folks have spent to try to get them there, which, is an amount of money. It's not all that much money, but they still haven't, it doesn't answer it. Okay, but you can read it. And I guess I keep wondering, why. I know Frank Sinatra is a reason, okay? Because, of course, it's a perception, but some people think it's a law from God or something like that. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Okay. So, I mean, if you're a believer in that and you're trying to make it anywhere and everywhere, then sure, go for the city.
A couple of other
I
quick
mean,
headlines.
how long are you going to live? I'm trying. I think these companies. What I'm trying to do is do it somewhere. Deliver an ounce of public good, of value to somebody. Okay. As opposed to, oh, mom, look, no hand selfie. La da dee. Look at the thrill. Oh, I got a ride. But they don't like me because what else have you done? And you can't solve the safety problem. Back to the safety problem. I'll put in my word. Michael put in his word. We probably cut it, and it ended up on the cutting room floor or something. But my word on the safety thing. The safety thing is the human in the loop. I keep saying that 90% of my opinion, 90% of the crashes on a daily basis are due by human misbehavior. And guess who's the last person that you're going to take that steering wheel out of their hands? It's the people that are misbehaving. So therefore, you can go get everybody, and you've done nothing until you get them on the safety end. So I don't know how I, I argue with my students about it. They treat me nicely. I like them. I like my students.
Couple of other quick headlines, Alan. From the New York Times, you have in the newsletter, taxi driver runs over man who once escaped custody on a city bus.
Did he do it on purpose?
I mean,
I mean, did he know the guy?
crew, you can read the article. Crews dragged a woman, whatever number of feet, 60 feet, 20 feet, and gets closed down. Another mode of mobility drags a person, what do they say in there, 10 miles, kills them. I don't think the woman in the cruise thing died. I hope she didn't. I hope she's well. I wish her well. What's happened to the taxi industry in New York? I don't know. Newspapers and the San Francisco Chronicle certainly isn't out there saying, shut it down. It's so unsafe. How could it happen? Where in the heck's the perception here?
Well, Alan, I don't think.
And on top of that, the most grueling thing about this is a discussion about the person who got killed. He had gotten fame apparently a year or so before because he basically escaped from Rikers Island prison by hopping on a bus. I mean, using mobility to escape hopping on a bus. But when you read, why was he in Rikers? Because he didn't pay a $36 taxi fare. What are we doing as a society, putting people in Rikers for not paying a $36 taxi fare? When I don't want to suggest that maybe on Wall Street, there are a lot of people doing a lot of stuff that I have probably I'm at Wall Street, but a heck of a lot worse than not paying a $36 taxi fare and not ending up in Rikers. So, I mean, I mean, can you imagine not being able to pay a $36 taxi fare, getting arrested, throwing, whatever, then, having the wherewithal to walk out of there and hop on a bus and go try to live your life, and then getting hit by a taxi and dragged 10 miles, and that's the way it ends? Oh my goodness. I don't know. This one to me just rattled me. And rattled me in terms of, what's being done on one end of, some people trying to provide this mobility for la-di-da and billions of dollars and whatever and to do, and really not even, doing it for, I don't know, we still have to ask why they there. And then going on whatever. Anyway, it just rattled me because I was rattled because of the other thing that you're about to mention now, which is the plane crash in Colorado.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You did include that here in the newsletter, Alan.
Yeah, and there was a plane crash in Colorado last Friday, and of course that totally rattled me this week, because of course my longtime friend, former student, class of '84, Rob Hill, passed away in that. And Rob, for years, had come to my classes, and he talk about the cellular auctions at the turn of the century and auction theory. And we just had a ball, in that class talking to students about auctions and computer auctions and various kinds of auctions and whatever. And always found a way to come to class. And I think he did tell us when he was in the class last spring, he always told his students, what you want to do is really, follow your dreams and find work that is what you want to do. Because then it's not work. And really an inspiration to I don't know how many of my former students. And in fact, he told us last spring that he was going back to his initial inspiration, which what he loved to do was be a flight instructor. And I don't know the details. There is a memorial service for him on Monday in Colorado, and I think I have a link to it if any of you can attend that knew Rob or that sat in this class, in the class that we had with him. And this is the second of the Hill brothers is to pass away at a much too early age. His older brother, Andy, passed away, I don't know, 10 years ago of cancer. He was one of the early employees at ALK. Had, I think, and then went to Microsoft, had a badge less than 1,000 at Microsoft. Retired at Microsoft, I mean, after a nice career. And of course, if you're badged less than 1,000, I'm sure he did well. And became a state senator in Washington State and did wonderful things for the state of Washington, and unfortunately passed. And his youngest brother, Wayne, who's still alive, condolences to you, Wayne. He was also an employee at ALK, so I had close interaction with all three brothers of that family, and now we've lost two of them. So I was rattled this week.
Right. On a somewhat brighter note, Alan, we want to, I guess, congratulate Kelly Funkhouser, who's been with us in the past. She was at Consumer Reports, now a senior product manager at NVIDIA.
Yeah, great. I mean, I'll have a great ride. I mean, we've had a couple people, you know, that we've been close to at NVIDIA who had a great ride there. And yeah, I'm sure you can add to that all the good work that company does.
Before we wrap things up, Alan, a little update on progress with Handy Rides.
Yes, soft launch last Thursday. It was with virtual riders. Learned a lot. Upcoming continuation of the soft launch with addition of real riders from the non-emergency medical riders and high quality nutrition riders, and also maybe some high quality affordable housing riders, and maybe even a few friends and family. So things are going well.
Things are moving.
Things have begun to move. We'll see.
So that will do it for this episode. Michael, thank you again for all of your insights and another great discussion.
My pleasure.
And these are all challenging topics, and they're, you know, it's not easy. That's why we talk about them. That's why. Yeah.
The website for more, again, is michaellsena, SENA.com. You can always find us at smartdrivingcar.com. My tech reports are at techstination.com. Thank you for watching or listening, and please stay safe.